Hello everyone, I'm back. The soup is cooked now, our vegetables are cooked, and I think we're ready to blend. So, big question I get in a lot of our classes is how can I tell if something's done? Well, there's two big things. One is to test them like with vegetables. You test them and see if they're soft to your liking, and the other thing is to taste them. So in this case, it's adequate if we just test these, and I got out one of the bigger pieces of the broccoli, and you can see how my fork just slides right down in it, and it goes in very easily, but it's not so cooked that it's all mushed up either. Now, there's a range here. I could have easily cooked this another 10 or 15 minutes and not been a problem at all. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, you got to get it exactly right. You don't, but you definitely don't want to go so far that, yeah, it starts getting mushy and breaking up, because then you begin to lose flavor at that point. Okay, so now we're ready to blend, and when we get to blending, you know, we kept telling you about all the options you have with this soup, and you have options here as well. One of the things you can use, one of the simplest and least expensive devices, is what's called an immersion blender. And what happens is that you stick it down into the pot and turn it on, and then the little blade on the bottom just blends up your soup. Now, if you're going to use one of these, you should probably cook it, or definitely you should cook it in a stock pot that's deeper, so that when you do this, it doesn't fly all over you or your kitchen walls and so forth. So be sure to cook that in a bigger pot for that. But I know that I was going to use my Vitamix. And a Vitamix is basically a blender, but it's really, really powerful. And so if you only have a regular blender, that's fine. I'm going to be using my Vitamix. If you don't have either of those, you might have a food processor, and that will work as well. Now, the one advantage of the Vitamix, I always kind of poo-pooed these and thought, oh, why do you need a Vitamix? I've got a food processor and a blender. But the Vitamix is unique in that it is so powerful that it can make those real velvety soups. And I was never able to achieve that with a food processor or regular blender or even the immersion blender. So don't worry if you don't have one, it'll be just fine the way it is. But if you do have one, it's wonderful if you like those real velvety soups. You might have had one in, say, a restaurant or somewhere, and they're quite delicious. So, okay, so now we'll go ahead, and I set my blender top, my Vitamix top, into the sink. That makes it a little easier to pour the hot cooked vegetables in, and I'll just put them all in there. And now probably you all know that you've got to be careful when you're blending hot things. If you're blending with the immersion blender, you want to be careful that it doesn't splatter up on you, and that's why I put it in the sink too. Kind of stand back a little bit and use the immersion blender and keep it down in the liquid. If you're using a blender, well, then you know that you've got to be careful, because the steam can kind of explode the top. And so one of the tricks I read about was to actually take off this top lid on your regular blender and then cover it with a dish towel so that the steam could release but without blowing up. So I'm going to include a couple links at the bottom of this video. So be sure to read those if you're not familiar with how to be safe when you're blending hot liquids. The Vitamix, one advantage is its lid is vented, and so I can put this on here and blend the hot liquids pretty safely. But again, you don't want to fill this all the way up. This is probably about as much as you want to do. It's about 2/3 full, I would say. The other thing is that I talked to you about how you could do this soup in steps, you know, like one night you cut it up, in the morning you cook it. Well, one advantage of that is that you can stick it in the oven after it's, or in the refrigerator after it's cooked, and it'll cool so that by the time you do it at night, you know, there won't be any problem with it exploding in your face or anything. And then you can just put it back in the same pan like this. I'll be putting it back in this pan again and heating it up on the stove. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and blend this. I'm going to be doing it on my Vitamix, which is really loud, and so I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and then when it's done, I'll resume with the last segment, which is the fun segment, which is when we do the seasoning. That's how we add the pizzazz to it. And there's so many options that you can do there, so we'll talk about that when I return after blending.